give him any answers. He only let the mentee himself give the answers. The consultants, on the other hand, provide all the solutions. Yes, he gets the watch from the mentee, but he tells the watch or the mentee what time is it, as we just learned. The mentor in between plays the professional role of really identifying what is the business model at stake here. What is the business idea? How does the value proposition that this mentee has meet the purchasing criteria of the market? And if yes, they meet each other, how can we then supply at a lower cost that the customer is willing to pay? In a way, it's very simple, but it's so basic to do that. And most mentees or entrepreneurs are so much in love with their own product, their own service, whatever they have invented. They think it sells by itself, but it doesn't. And this is where the mentors come into the picture with a professional support and questioning and coaching or sparing in a way to get the answers right and use the knowledge from the program to lay out a growth strategy. So I won't say much more, but I'm sure that Kenya needs this program. We have heard a lot of evidence in that one, and the program is also needed outside of Kenya, and I'm very pleased that Muteti has now taken those initiatives to make sure that we can support even other countries with developing these kind of basic industrial structure from where we can see, hopefully, large companies grow in the future. So thank you. I think thank you to the RCED staff for making it happen. We were there in the background. We provided support, but they made it happen. That's the whole difference. And of course, I can also speak halfly on behalf of the Danish embassy. They would have been very pleased to be here tonight and this morning, and listen to all the good evidence that we have had. But unfortunately, they couldn't make it. And finally, I would very much like to thank Professor Thairo for Inoorero being that innovative place where such a thing could happen. It's not easy for a classical or for an academic institution to do something which is not classical academic. And here we really created something which was outside the formal structures of an academic education. And I think we owe a lot of thanks to the courage that you've shown from that. Thank you so much.
We have our chief guest, Dr. Cesar Mwangi. Dr. Mwangi is currently the MD of Sasini Limited since January 2009. It's an agribusiness listed on the Nairobi Stock Exchange, involved in the growing, processing, and marketing of tea, coffee, dairy, and horticultural products. He's also a governor with the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. His career has spanned over 25 years, including being an associate director with the consultative group in International Agricultural Research Internal Audit Unit. He's founded and worked as MD of Maisha Consulting, based in Johannesburg. He's a finance director with the Independent Mediation Service of South Africa. He's been a business strategy consultant with Deloitte & Touche in Joburg and Nairobi. And he's been an external auditor with Coopers and Libran in Nairobi. His personal interests, issues related to value-based leadership, organizational effectiveness, people effectiveness, and the critical role of the natural family as the backbone of a sustainable society.
Thank you very much. I will thank everybody here today for this wonderful, wonderful occasion, and I will observe all protocols by saying, good morning, friends. I hope that covers everybody, because I believe we're all friends. One thing that was not mentioned in my CV, which I think is very important, is that in 1991, there was a mentoring program in this country, and as a young consultant at the time, I was extremely enthusiastic about small business and mentoring. And that was known as the Kenya Management Assistance Program. Does anybody remember that? Yes, it was funded by the USAID, I believe, and it was very exciting. The only problem I realized at that time is that Inoorero University did not exist. So we didn't get the beautiful training I've heard about today. And we were told you will become mentors, but I don't remember the training. But I remember mentoring a few businesses, and it was extremely exciting. Because I believe the issue of small business and the growth is a very exciting area to be in. Right? The reason it is so exciting is very simple. It is about giving. It is about building. It is about others, not yourself. It is about helping others to grow. It is about helping others to be successful. It is about positive change through unselfish actions. And the unfortunate thing is we live in a world which is so full of selfishness, my friends. And we are now talking about helping others succeed and not only about yourselves. And I think this is what will make a difference. Even when we talk of Vision 2030, my dear friends, and I've said this before in other forums, Vision 2030 cannot be actualized if we continue being selfish, thinking of ourselves. It cannot. Nothing can grow because of me, myself, and I. When you give, you don't lose anything. In fact, you gain more. The mentor who spoke here said, she gives, she gives, she gives. And the mentee said, I learned, and I want others to get, and I want to give. Everybody does better. And that's the basis of development. You understand? I have a background in economics, and I was quite disillusioned with neoclassical economics because they did not talk about people. And there is only one economist I have heard who talked about people. And he said he had a PhD in economics. His name was E.F. Schumacher. He had a PhD in economics. But he said there's a problem with neoclassical economics. It talks about growth. It talks about falling costs of production. It talks about increasing profitability. But nowhere does it talk about the people who are involved. Today we are talking about the people and how they can grow their businesses. And E.F. Schumacher wrote a book called Small is Beautiful, a study of economics as if people matter. I don't even know if you've seen that book. A fantastic book. It's a classic. You must read it. Okay? Because he is among the first economists who ever wrote about economics and people. And here we're talking about Vision 2030. I'm not sure we've spoken sufficiently in Vision 2030 about people. But here in this room, we're talking about it. The mentorship process to develop other businesses is about people developing. And that way, the country will develop. It's a no-brainer. But we know the current arguments in our press. We want to be paid more, and we want bigger cars, and my house should cost 75 million because I have a certain title. Misallocation of resources. That's not the way to grow a country. Eh? So let me go back to my topic, which is Vision 2030. But I just wanted to give you a preamble. Because we're talking about the vision. Where do we want to go to? The vision is to be a globally competitive and prosperous Kenya. A globally competitive and prosperous Kenya with growth rates of at least 10% per year. We're currently on 4-5%. Maybe we go up to 6%. But we have a missing link right here called small business growth, which can be addressed through serious passing on of knowledge, facilitating others to grow. And I can tell you we'll get to that 10% very easily. So we know in 2005 our government decided that they're going to go for a vision based on the recommendation by the National Economic and Social Council. So let's have a vision, 2030. Our foundation for socio-economic transformation. That was the whole idea. Eh? Now, this vision, and I'm not going to go into all the details, I'm sure all of you know the details of Vision 2030. Can everybody put their hands, those who are very clear on what this vision says, etc., etc. I'm not surprised. Not everybody is very clear on this vision because it was somehow a top-down approach. Somehow it was. I personally was not consulted. Were you consulted? No. And I hear it was done by American consultants, very reputable firm, right? That was very good. But somehow we didn't get it. But I tried to look at this vision and ask myself, what does this vision have in relation to entrepreneurship? Okay, so very quickly, foundations for our socio-economic transformation, Vision 2030. The foundations were listed as 6 of them. 6 foundations for our socio-economic transformation. Number 1 was infrastructure. Anything to do with entrepreneurship? The government normally provides infrastructure, etc. But if infrastructure is improved, the entrepreneurs can do better because they will not be always repairing their vehicles on the potholed roads, isn't it? That's a practical aspect. So it's a good thing. Let's improve the infrastructure. That's very good. The second foundation was science, technology, and innovation. And I like this one very much because it has everything to do with entrepreneurship. It has everything to do with what we're talking about here today. And the mentees have told us, the mentee has told us, think outside the box. You've got this facility. What can you do with it? That's innovation, isn't it? So that second one have everything to do with entrepreneurship. So that is Vision 2030. The third one was land reforms. Okay, maybe not too much to do with entrepreneurship. This was an issue of land titles, etc., community lands and all that. The fourth one was human resource development. Human resource development. What have we been doing in this program? Tell me. What else but human resource development? Our country has fantastic human resources, and we just need to keep on using that fantastic resource to develop other resources to be fantastic, so they can develop others who can be fantastic, so they can develop others who can be fantastic. What else? Do you see the point? That fourth foundation about human resource development, and I would like this, and my good friend Muteti here, I've discussed with him and mentioned to him that we should mainstream mentorship because it is about human resource development, and we can say that in Vision 2030 we've talked about human resource development. It is not about giving certificates. It is not about academic qualifications. Because I happen to also do some part-time work at the Strathmore Business School and have some students who are doing MBAs, and I supervise them. But they want to get their certificates. And I tell them more than that is, what are you going to do with the qualifications and the learning you get in this institution? That is what we want. But people want to get the certificates and say that I have the certificate, and that is not sufficient. But what we are doing here is not about a certificate. It is about actions that are going to contribute to a better turnover, which will contribute to Mr. Njiraine's deficit. Human resource development, very critical. The fifth one is security, very good. The security, we entrepreneurs can do much more. Fantastic. And the sixth one is about public service, improve public service, we get what we need, the permits we need. There's more honesty, there's integrity, etc., etc. Okay? So there's a lot of issues there in those foundations, but I just want to emphasize the 2, science, technology, and innovation, great role for entrepreneurs, and the human resource development aspect. We are right there, and we should catalyze that we are included much more. I just want to mention that fortunately there's the SMME bill, that was the MSE bill that was passed in 2012, and it was assented in January 2013, this year. And I really want to recognize the chairman, the Chancellor, Honorable F.T. Nyamo. He sponsored it as a private member's motion. So Inoorero University, right from the top, right through to our dear professor here, and everybody, Wanja and everybody else, are right there. Practical actions from legislation to the practical programs that we have, which are not necessarily too academic, and it was mentioned. They are right there pushing the right agenda, and I really want us to give them a very big hand now for that. Yeah. Well done. You have walked the talk, and I am extremely delighted by that. So, those are the the 6 foundations, and I've mentioned 2 of them in particular. But let's go to the economic pillar. There are 3 pillars in Vision 2030. There are 3. The first one is the economic, there is the political, and there is the social. But let's look at the political. The economic, tourism, all right, agriculture, these are the areas of emphasis, wholesale and retail, manufacturing, business process outsourcing, financial services. I mean, entrepreneurs can participate in any of these areas. Okay? So it goes without saying. But there are big players in some of these areas. We are a big player in agriculture, for example, in Sasini, but there are many also small players in agriculture. Many, many, many. And there are huge possibilities. We work currently we work with entrepreneurs, for example, in Sasini, in the value-added division. We have a division which deals with retail products. And we realized we should not be working as a company to distribute these products in the mass market. So let's look for entrepreneurs who can actually do this distribution for us. Then we don't have to use our vehicles with the cost of diesel and et cetera, the cost of repairs being very high. Why don't we save this cost and use these to remunerate the entrepreneurs, and give them a large profit margin for them to distribute the products there. And we're trying in our own small way to do this. But there are many, many opportunities, I think, in these various sectors in the economic pillar to improve business, for entrepreneurs to run their businesses. And I see that as I read some of the literature, I was very thrilled to see all sorts of wonderful businesses. Omena packaging and distribution, very fantastic business. I think there was one of the mentees who was in the Omena business, isn't it? And that's a very tasty product. For those of us from Central, we never used to eat fish, but now we eat. Anyway, we go to the social pillar. We've got education and training. This is part of the social pillar, emphasis of the social pillar, education and training. And we are saying education and training, and we should emphasize, is in Vision 2030. But what type of education and training is it? What type is it? Is it the one that is geared, tragically, to give certificates so that people can get white-collar jobs? In the past few days, I think you've been reading the serialization of the unemployment crisis in Kenya. Have you been reading that? It is tragic. The way it has been put down, the way it has been summarized is that the world has come to an end because we got a certificate, and after that certificate, after my family struggled to educate me, I cannot get a job. Do you see the mindset? We are stuck in a certain mindset. We have to get a job after we get a certificate. But the mindset should change, and we should be saying, my business in life as a young person is not to get a job. It is to earn a living for myself and my family and those around me so that I can improve myself and my society. That should be the mindset. And that mindset is found in entrepreneurship. And that's why we need to encourage education and training in entrepreneurship, which is what has been happening here through this program. And we should have many of these, more cohorts, more programs like this. And we can use Vision 2030 to justify the need for allocation of funding in this. Okay? And I think Mr. Mteti is listening to this very carefully because we have a strong basis, because we're talking about a documented national policy called Vision 2030. And we now have to say we have to do the things that have impact, not do the things that have been done. Right? The next one is healthcare delivery. It's very good also. We can also have private entrepreneurs in this area. But I just want to mention just a few in the social pillar. Water and sanitation. I hear the issues of biogas and all this, and energy and water and sanitation issues, which again, entrepreneurship can be found there. I've come across also the fourth issue there is the environmental management. That is part of the social pillar. I've come across entrepreneurs. I think, I don't know if we have representatives of Enablis. Enablis does very good work, but I once went to one of their meetings, and there was an entrepreneur there who was producing the fencing posts from waste materials, waste plastics. I don't know if you've come across those kind of posts. But that contributes very much to this environmental management issue. And finally, there's gender, youth, and vulnerable groups. And we're talking about young people needing jobs, young entrepreneurs, and again, that is something we've talked about here. There's also housing and urbanization as a part of the social pillar. A lot of scope for entrepreneurs in this area of affordable housing, housing inputs, housing materials. I think the sky is the limit, and it is all in Vision 2030, in the economic and in the social pillar. There is a political pillar which I will not talk about. I will leave this to politicians, okay? Fair enough? Yes. Now, the point I want to make is that in Vision 2030, there's a lot of scope for entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship development. And we have the documented, if any of you go through the detailed Vision 2030, you will see all these issues documented there very well. And we should be working towards getting mentorship streamlined into all these initiatives as part of the bigger vision. I think that's the point I want to make. Second point I want to make is, as we sit in KEPSA, by the way, KEPSA is the private sector lobbying group that tries to encompass all the private sector in the country. There's education institutions and all other businesses through the member organizations. Now, KEPSA identified, in one of our meetings, we identified what are the constraints to achieving economic growth. Okay? And 6 constraints were identified. 6 constraints were identified. And I want to just mention these constraints because I believe through programs like this, we may have an opportunity to address these constraints. One of the challenges we sometimes have in KEPSA is we identify constraints and then we seek solutions, and sometimes we don't see the obvious ones. And sometimes this one should now feature more in the seeking of solutions in the constraints. The first constraint that was identified was high production costs for our industries. High production costs. All the big businesses complain about high production costs, right? But the beauty of small businesses is that they can be low-cost producers. Am I right? The reason we probably have these high costs is because some of the remuneration structures in the in the big businesses are ridiculous, to say the least. Am I right? We have a high cost mindset to maintain those in positions of decision making. It's not that we have high production costs, it's a difference. But the small businesses, they do things very practically. We heard the mentee say very clearly, this is the car I use to transport the children, but it's also my personal car. That is a practical way of